what I wanted to talk about is basically 6 habits that you might be doing or not doing in your daily life that could be making your blood sugar unstable. And if you are somebody who's diabetic, you know that having an unstable blood sugar is bad because it can lead to a lot of poor health issues. But also at the same time, even if you're not diabetic, obviously maintaining stable blood sugar will hopefully get you to not be diabetic. But on top of that, kind of decrease some of the tiredness and energy fluctuations throughout the day, which if you have stable energy, you're going to be able to feel a lot better, obviously, but also make better food choices because whenever we're tired, I know myself personally, it's harder to make proper food choices. When I wake up in the morning and I had a bad night of sleep, the last thing I really want to do is eat healthy. That donut and coffee looks delicious. So, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. So I'm going to go over just a few of these, and if there's questions throughout, feel free to stop. I'll obviously have time at the end to answer some questions too. One of the first habits that I had down in my list here is eating only carbs in either meals or snacks. And I want to say this because people will initially think, oh, duh, like carbs and insulin, all these things. But what people don't realize is that carbs in itself aren't necessarily the enemy. It's when people only eat carbs, almost called naked carbs, I like to use the term, with a meal. And this is simply because the carb itself can spike your blood sugar, which can kind of lead to some energy fluctuations. But what you can really easily do is just add some fat and a little bit of protein into your meals in addition to your carbs, and that can actually reduce the blood sugar spike, considering if you just ate it without any carbs. So that's something a lot of people don't know. If you combine them all together in a meal, it's going to greatly reduce the blood sugar spike. So I think that's super, super important. So let's say, for example, you're like, oh, I'm really hungry. I'm going to get a bagel. There are some fats and a little bit of protein in that bagel, but it's largely carbs. So if you're trying to make it, I'd say less insulin spiking or less blood sugar spiking, maybe adding a little bit more peanut butter on it. You could have it with, I know this sounds crazy, but I myself personally might just have a little piece of chicken breast with it that's got a little bit of protein. Combining that together will greatly reduce the blood sugar spike. And you can apply that to your life. Maybe rice as an example. A lot of people, oh, I'm just going to eat rice for a snack. Trying to have a little bit of extra protein and fat is a great way. Yeah, absolutely. And that's total another side note tangent. Obviously, try to make healthy protein choices and fats. I'm not saying go drown it out in butter, right? Because we know high in saturated fat and calories and very easy to overconsume. So just kind of trying to be mindful about having all your macronutrients. Um, Another habit that a lot of people don't do that will actually reduce your blood sugar spikes is lifting weights. So this is something, and I should say lifting weights doesn't have to be actually what you need to do. Just resistance training in general will help to reduce blood sugar spikes. Or I should say maintain your blood sugar better throughout the day. And this is because when you build some muscle, and it doesn't have to be a lot of muscle, it can be just a little bit of muscle. So you don't need to be looking like a bodybuilder. Having muscle mass in particular actually soaks up excess blood glucose, kind of like a sponge. So if you are somebody who doesn't have a lot of muscle mass and you have a lot of free floating glucose in your bloodstream in your body, it doesn't have anywhere to go other than just sit in your bloodstream. But if you have extra muscle, muscle needs a lot of nutrients, specifically sugar, which gives it energy, which is, hey, that's a great place for that extra blood glucose to go, even when you're just sitting and doing nothing. But especially after you do resistance training as well, and before. All of it's good. But adding in a little bit of resistance training, and again, this doesn't have to be lifting crazy weights, just literally using your muscles, even with resistance bands, which I might show you guys in a second, will give your body a reason to build that muscle, and then having improved muscle can help manage the blood glucose. Like push-ups, if I do, I haven't done really, but if I do push-ups, I do it off the wall. I can't. Yeah, absolutely. So doing a great example. So doing push-ups, that's going to work your triceps, your shoulders, and your chest muscles. When you do an exercise like that, you could do it off a wall. You could do it off your counter. Another easy way to actually add some push-ups in is doing it off of some stairs, and you can really regress and do different levels there. But when you do that, you're building muscle, which, as I kind of just described, that muscle can help to manage your blood glucose. So another thing you might realize, may or may not know, but sleep actually can really, really affect your blood glucose levels. So sleep is foundational for a lot of aspects of health, as we all know. But if you are underslept, this actually increases a couple different things in your body. Or I should say, it increases one thing, decreases another thing. It increases a hormone called ghrelin in your body, which ghrelin is basically the hunger hormone. It tells your body, hey, it's time to eat. Absolutely. A good way to remember that is ghrelin kind of sounds like growl. So that's the one that makes you feel hungry. Leptin is your satiety hormone, which is basically the hormone which tells your body, hey, I'm full. So you almost get this double-edged sword of, if I'm neglecting sleep, I'm going to increase my hunger hormone, which is going to make me more hungry, and also decrease the hormone that makes me feel satisfied, right? So this doesn't directly cause your blood glucose to increase, but if you take somebody who has a very high hunger and a very low ability to regulate that hunger, I'm going to be eating lots of food probably in general, but specifically we usually want those kind of higher carb foods, higher carb, higher fat foods, especially when we're tired. Nobody seems to have a craving for like lettuce. Right, exactly. Yeah. And the last thing we want to eat when we're sleep deprived is a good old salad, right? Not at all, not at all. So, um, also too, there is just some other hormonal things that happen kind of behind the scenes when it comes to your appetite regulation in blood glucose management specifically. But those two things with ghrelin and leptin are kind of the biggest things. Another thing that people often do that could be ruining your overall blood sugar management in your body is eating your carbs first in your meals. When you are making a meal for yourself, let's say you have potatoes, a steak, and some vegetables. That's a really good meal. It's very well balanced. And as we described earlier, if you're already eating all of those together, it's going to have much less of a spike on your blood sugar than if you, say, just ate potatoes in that meal. But also, the order that you eat your food makes a huge difference. When you are eating food, eating the carbs first, simply because they're going to be what's digesting first, can actually increase that blood glucose. If you, however, ate your vegetables first or your protein first, doesn't particularly matter which one. I would say protein first, then vegetables. It depends, but when you're thinking about blood sugar management, doing basically all of the foods that aren't as higher of carb will help to decrease the overall spike. So this is a really, really good hack and something I've been trying to implement in my daily life. Say I have that exact meal I just had. Even though I really like having all of them together, like having a bite of your potato, your steak, and vegetable all in one, I've been trying to lean towards eating most of my steak first or most of my vegetables first, and then having maybe a couple bites of them all together, just because I know it's going to kind of monitor my blood glucose a lot better. Right. Good question. Yeah. So, dessert after a normal meal. Again,
Not before, huh?
no. Well, as we definitely just described, having it before would really spike your blood sugar. And for all of these too, we're talking about blood sugar, not like just general health metrics. Blood sugar is part of your health, and longevity, but yeah, having a dessert after, assuming you had all that stuff before, wouldn't spike it as much as if you did have it before. Having anything sweet, especially high in sugar, is going to spike your blood sugar. But with that said, if what you had as a dessert had other kind of macronutrients involved in it, as we described, I'm trying to think of a higher protein dessert. I actually use protein powder every now and again and make like little protein cakes. So if I had like a protein cake, maybe with some actual ice cream on top of it, which is going to have both carbs and fats in it, definitely wouldn't spike my blood sugar as much. So I think to that point, trying to find lower sugar options is just the best advice I could give. But yeah, you're going to be, I mean, kind of the part of this too is 80/20. You know, you want to live your life. I think just being self aware and knowing, like, hey, if I do these little things most of the time, it's going to keep my blood sugar stable, ideally, most of the time. And, you know, sometimes when you're out on weddings and birthdays and stuff, it's like, I'm probably not going to feel good regardless because this entire meal is not really the best of food. So you pick your battles. Two other things. Starting your day wrong. So a lot of people, especially when it comes to breakfast, will lean towards really quick options because they're trying to get their day started. They're running out on the day. But eating a lot of these quicker options like muffins, bagels, cereals, pastries, all of these things are very high in carbohydrates and not a lot of other things. And as we discussed at the beginning, eating just a sole food by itself, specifically carb rich foods by itself, is a great way to really spike your blood sugar, which unfortunately will cause your overall day to be a lot of energy fluctuation. So you're going to be up and down. And I know when I'm tired throughout the day, maybe after, you know, lunchtime, you have that quote unquote crash. The last thing I want to do is eat healthy when I get back home because I'm just tired. And being tired sucks. Being tired really sucks when you're making healthy choices. I mean, how many times do you go to the store and you're just tired and hungry? It's like, oh man, I'm going right to the pizza, or actually the desserts is probably the worst thing I do, but literally go right back to the bakery. I'm just looking at it all. I know to kind of just keep my wallet in my car, so I can't really do anything about it if I'm in that situation. But
you can go back and get your wallet.
absolutely, and sometimes I do. Actually, more often than not. But starting your day with kind of those higher carb options can spike your blood sugar, leading to a crash, wanting more stuff later in the day. I should also say too, I kind of thought of another food typically eaten at breakfast time: fruit. And fruit is very healthy, but also if we're thinking about having kind of meals that are just carbs, breakfast time for a lot of people is one of the biggest perpetrators of that. I should say, like, how many individuals will have a muffin with a piece of fruit, or like some pancakes with some fruit, toast with fruit. That is very common among a lot of individuals. Not everyone, but if you are in that camp, trying to find some ways to add a little bit of extra protein into your daily breakfast is a great idea. Myself personally, I love fruit, especially in the morning. So I actually just have Greek yogurt with it. Greek yogurt's really high in protein. It's pretty low in fat. If you wanted to get a little bit of extra fat in there, you could have some peanut butter, nut butters, maybe even a little bit of cheese too, some dairy. So, last thing, neglecting your water. So, being dehydrated can affect your blood sugar in a few different ways. If you're somebody who is diabetic, having enough water in your overall body when you consume it allows your body to essentially excrete excess sugar through the urine. So that's kind of one aspect of it. So if you're dehydrated, basically your body is sending you a signal that says, hey, keep all the fluid I have in me. And if you are dehydrated and your body's telling you that, you can't get rid of all of that extra sugar that might be floating around. So, specifically if you're diabetic, good thing to know. But on top of that, as we kind of had this correlation with hunger earlier, being dehydrated can sometimes basically mask being hungry. So, in other words, if you are dehydrated, you might feel hungry. And let's say you just take a couple glasses of water. Usually, if you're starting to feel hungry, that can sometimes, for a lot of people, help deal with their hunger. So, instead of leaning towards one of those quick snacks that we talked about earlier, because I'm out and about, maybe granola bar, very high in carbs, spike your blood sugar. Just drinking a little bit of water can kind of help curb that hunger and help your energy in all of those. So those are just a few different things to consider. There's a lot of things, even if you just take one of those and just kind of look at your own life and see how it kind of looks, can definitely help manage your blood sugar a lot better. And it doesn't have to be all of them. Yeah, just take one thing, try to implement it, and work from there. But hopefully that gave a little insight.
Will lower the blood because that's what we use for people that are running 265 real high.
Yeah,
To say, okay, we're gonna flush you with some water and you're gonna get a little exercise in it.
absolutely. And that's a really good, actually, and I forgot to mention too, the exercise portion of that too. Even a very small bit of exercise before or after a meal will greatly, greatly help to either reduce the blood sugar spike that will happen or just monitor your levels a little more. The way I do this, I don't do this all the time, but I will actually, I have a treadmill at home, so I'm kind of lucky, but I will literally, on a very, very low setting, it's like a 1 to 2 mile per an hour, basically like I'm just jogging in place, I will eat a meal. Again, it can't be a huge meal, obviously, because I'm walking. If it's something where I'm kind of, maybe it's a little bit bigger meal, or it's not something I could actively hold, I will just stand too, because standing is obviously going to burn a little more energy than just sitting and doing it. So just some different ways to reconsider it. But even if you are just go for a 10-minute walk before or after your meal too, that will also help as well. Very small bits of exercise. It doesn't need to be a lot. Actually, even just doing like say 1 minute of have 1 minute of sit to stand. So this exercise, you don't have to do this for a minute straight, but say you set a timer, one, two, do as many as you can in a minute right before your meal. Great, great way, because as we just described too, at that point your muscles now have just been used. They're kind of screaming for a little bit of energy. So not only in that immediate, but if you do that consistently too, you can build some overall muscle strength, which can help to monitor that blood glucose as well. So, yes, thank you. Practical experience, nursing. It's
Yeah.
used, nursing approved.